The alarm went off at 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before it was supposed to. Marcus Webb didn't bother hitting snooze. Sleep was a luxury he'd stopped chasing years ago. He rolled out of bed in the dark, his feet finding the worn carpet of his one-bedroom apartment in East Atlanta. The springs in the pull-out couch groaned softly from the living room where his daughter slept. 7-year-old Ivy. His whole world compressed into 52 pounds of questions, laughter, and an opinion about everything. The bathroom mirror showed him what he already knew. 32 years old, but the lines around his eyes suggested older. Dark brown skin, close-cropped fade that he'd learned to cut himself, broad shoulders that still carried the ghost of his college football days. Before everything changed. Before medical school became an impossible dream. Before he became a single father, working double shifts just to keep the lights on. He splashed cold water on his face and got dressed. Navy blue scrubs, white undershirt, the same black sneakers he'd resoled twice. His hospital badge clipped to his chest read, Marcus Webb, Patient Care Technician, Emory Rehabilitation Hospital. In the kitchenette, he moved with practiced efficiency. 2 eggs scrambled, wheat toast, apple slices arranged on the pink plate Ivy had picked out at Goodwill. Orange juice in the cup with the chip on the rim that she refused to drink from any other cup. He checked his phone. $43.27 in his checking account until Friday. Rent was due in 6 days. He didn't let himself think about it too long. Thinking didn't change numbers. By 5:30, he was gently shaking Ivy awake. Come on, baby girl. Time to get up. She groaned, burying her face in the pillow. 5 more minutes, Daddy. We did 5 more minutes yesterday, he said softly, pulling back the blanket. And the day before. Come on now. Ivy sat up, her natural hair a cloud around her face, eyes still half closed. Marcus had learned to do hair through YouTube tutorials and patient guidance from his neighbor Miss Claudette. This morning, he gathered Ivy's curls into 2 puffballs, securing them with elastic bands and adding the butterfly clips she loved. You're getting good at this, Ivy mumbled, leaning back against his chest. I had a good teacher, Marcus said, thinking of his wife, of Simone, who'd shown him how to part hair straight, how to moisturize without making it greasy, how to make their daughter feel beautiful, before the breast cancer took her, before he had to learn everything alone. Ivy turned and looked up at him, her brown eyes suddenly alert. You're thinking about Mama. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. It wasn't a question. His daughter had always been perceptive, reading his silences like other kids read picture books. Just a little, he admitted. Me too, Ivy said. I think she'd like my hair today. She'd love it, Marcus said, his voice thick. Just like she'd love you. They ate breakfast together at the small table pushed against the wall. Ivy told him about the book her teacher was reading in class, about her friend Maya who'd invited her to a birthday party this weekend at a trampoline park. Marcus listened, calculating silently. $15 for admission, another $10 for a present. Money he didn't have but would find somehow. Can I go, Daddy? Of course you can go, he said, smiling despite the knot in his stomach. We'll get Maya something nice. By 6:15, they were out the door. Marcus dropped Ivy at Miss Claudette's apartment 2 floors down. The older woman had 7 grandchildren of her own and watched Ivy every morning before school for $20 a week, a rate Marcus knew was far below market, but one Miss Claudette insisted on. Your family, she always said, and family takes care of family. The bus ride to the hospital took 40 minutes. Marcus stood near the back, swaying with the motion, his mind already shifting into work mode. Patient care technician was a kind way of saying he did everything the nurses didn't have time for, helping patients to the bathroom, changing bed linens, assisting with meals, transferring people from beds to wheelchairs and back again. It was hard work, physical work, work that left his back aching and his hands dry from constant washing. But it was also meaningful work. He saw people at their most vulnerable, their most frightened, their most human, and sometimes, on good days, he saw them heal. The rehabilitation hospital specialized in spinal cord injuries, traumatic brain injuries, stroke recovery. Marcus had been there for 3 years, ever since he'd dropped out of his pre-med program at Morehouse to care for Simone during her treatment. After she died, going back to medical school had seemed impossible. The debt, the time, the energy required when he had a 3-year-old daughter who'd just lost her mother. So he'd found this job instead, close enough to medicine to feel like he was still helping, far enough from his dreams to hurt only when he let himself think about it. The morning shift started with rounds. Marcus checked in on his assigned patients. Mr. Henderson, recovering from a stroke, learning to feed himself again with his left hand. Mrs. Chen, whose spinal surgery had left her with limited mobility but fierce determination. Jamal, a 19-year-old who'd broken his back in a diving accident and spent most days staring at the ceiling, refusing to engage with physical therapy. Marcus had a gentle way with the resistant ones. He never pushed, never lectured. He just showed up, day after day, with quiet consistency. "How you doing today, Jamal?" Marcus asked, adjusting the young man's pillows. "Same as yesterday," Jamal muttered. "Same as I'll be tomorrow." "Your PT said you moved your toes yesterday during the session." "So what? I still can't walk." Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "My daughter's learning to ride a bike. Every time she falls, she says she'll never learn. But she keeps getting back on. You know why?" Jamal didn't answer, because falling and failing aren't the same thing. Falling means you tried. Failing is when you stop trying. "That's corny as hell," Jamal said, but there was less edge in his voice. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, probably, but it's still true." He finished his rounds, grabbed a quick lunch from the vending machine, crackers and a protein bar he'd eat standing up, and was heading back to the floor when his supervisor caught him. "Marcus, we've got a new patient arriving in 20 minutes. High-profile case. I need you to help with the admission." "Sure thing," Marcus said. "What's the situation?" "Young woman, 26, paraplegic from a car accident 9 months ago. She's been through 3 other rehab facilities. Family's wealthy, demanding. This is kind of a last-ditch effort." Marcus nodded, tucking his phone into his pocket. "I'll be ready." He didn't know it yet, but in 20 minutes his entire life was about to change. The limousine pulled up to the hospital entrance at exactly 2:47 p.m., black and gleaming like a wound in the bright Georgia afternoon. Marcus stood with the intake nurse, Keisha, near the automatic doors, watching as a driver in a pressed uniform emerged from the front seat and moved to open the rear door. What happened next would stay with Marcus for the rest of his life. A wheelchair emerged first, expensive, lightweight titanium with custom purple wheels. Then came the woman. She was beautiful in a way that made Marcus forget to breathe. Deep brown skin that caught the sunlight, high cheekbones, full lips pressed into a tight line of resignation. Her natural hair was styled in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, adorned with gold cuffs. She wore designer clothes, a cream silk blouse, tailored slacks, that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. But it was her eyes that stopped him. Dark, intelligent, and utterly empty. The eyes of someone who'd already given up. Behind the wheelchair came a man in an expensive suit, mid-40s, with the kind of polished appearance that screamed old money and new arrogance. He spoke rapidly into his phone, barely glancing at the woman. "Yes, this is the facility, the last one. If they can't fix her here, we'll need to consider alternative arrangements. No, she won't be a problem. She barely speaks anymore." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Keisha moved forward with her clipboard and professional smile. "Welcome to Emory Rehabilitation Hospital. You must be Ms. Whitmore?" The woman nodded once, her hands folded precisely in her lap. "I'm her uncle, Richard Whitmore," the man said, pocketing his phone. "I'll be handling all medical decisions and financial arrangements. Daniela is not in a position to make informed choices about her care." "Actually," Keisha said pleasantly, "unless there's a legal guardianship in place, Ms. Whitmore retains full medical decision-making capacity." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, I simply meant she's been uncooperative at previous facilities, resistant to treatment, defeatist attitude." He said these words as if Daniela weren't sitting right there, as if she were furniture. Marcus watched Daniela's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. She was listening. She was present. She just wasn't fighting anymore. The intake process was efficient and cold. Richard signed papers, made demands about private rooms and specialized equipment, complained about the decor. Through it all, Daniela sat silent, her gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the hospital walls. When it came time to transfer her to the room, Richard checked his watch. "I have a meeting in an hour. I trust your staff can handle things from here?" He didn't wait for an answer, already walking toward the door. He paused, turned back to Daniela. "Try to cooperate this time. The family is running out of patience." Then he was gone. The silence that followed felt heavy and sacred. Keisha glanced at Marcus, a whole conversation passing between them in a look. Then she smiled at Daniela. "Ms. Whitmore, this is Marcus. He's one of our best patient care technicians. He'll help you get settled." Daniela's eyes flicked to Marcus for the first time, then away. "Fine." Her voice was quiet, refined, and utterly defeated. Marcus moved to the back of her wheelchair. "Ready when you are." As they moved through the hospital corridors, Marcus didn't try to make conversation. He'd learned that silence was sometimes kinder than empty cheerfulness. But he noticed things. The way Daniela's hands gripped the armrests a little too tightly. The way she flinched when they passed other patients in the hallway. The way she held her breath when an older black woman in a wheelchair rolled past, moving independently, laughing at something her physical therapist said. Hope, Marcus realized, hurt her. The sight of possibility felt like a betrayal. The private room was spacious, sunlit, with a view of the garden outside. Expensive, clearly. Marcus helped transfer Daniela to the hospital bed, his movements practiced and respectful. "Do you need anything?" he asked. "Water? Extra pillows?" "No." She was already turning her face toward the window, dismissing him. Marcus should have left. His shift was nearly over. Ivy was waiting, but something kept him there, standing in the doorway. "Can I tell you something?" he said quietly. Daniela didn't turn, but she didn't tell him to leave either. 3 years ago, my wife died of cancer. Stage 4, diagnosed when our daughter was 2 years old. We had 6 months from diagnosis to the end. He paused. For the last 2 months, she was in a facility like this, and every day I watched her give up a little more. Not because she was weak, but because everyone around her had already decided she was gone. Daniela's shoulders had gone very still. "I'm not telling you this to compare pain," Marcus continued. "I'm telling you because I know what it looks like when someone stops fighting. And I know it's usually not because they want to. It's because they're exhausted from fighting alone." Finally, Daniela turned her head slightly. "What's your point?" "My point is, you don't have to fight alone here. That's all." She stared at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for the catch, the pity, the judgment. Finding none, something flickered in her expression. Not hope, not yet, but perhaps the faintest crack in the armor. "They all say that," she whispered, "every facility, every therapist, every well-meaning stranger. You can do this. Don't give up. But they don't understand." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm not giving up on walking. I'm accepting reality. The doctors were clear. Complete spinal cord injury, no motor function, no sensation, no hope. What if they're wrong? They're not. But what if they are? Daniela laughed, bitter and sharp. Hope is expensive, and I'm tired of paying for it. Marcus nodded slowly. Fair enough. Then maybe don't hope. Just show up. Let us do the hoping for you for a while. Before Daniela could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from Miss Claudette. Ivy, running fever. 101. Can you come get her? Marcus's heart dropped. I have to go. My daughter's sick. He was already moving toward the door when Daniela's voice stopped him. How old? 7. You're raising her alone? Yeah. Something shifted in Daniela's expression. That must be hard. It's everything, Marcus said honestly. Then he was gone, his mind already racing ahead to Ivy, to doctor's visits he couldn't afford, to the precarious balance of his life threatening to tip. But in the room behind him, Daniela Whitmore sat very still, replaying his words. Just show up. Let us do the hoping for you for a while. It had been 9 months since anyone had offered to carry something for her. 9 months since anyone had seen her as anything other than a problem to solve or tragedy to pity. She didn't know why, but she found herself thinking about the man with kind eyes and work-worn hands, rushing home to a sick daughter. Found herself wondering what it would feel like to have someone rush toward you instead of away. Ivy's fever broke at 3 a.m. Marcus sat in the chair beside her bed. His bed, the only bed in their apartment, watching her chest rise and fall, the cool washcloth on her forehead finally unnecessary. The pediatric urgent care visit had cost $120 he didn't have. He'd used the credit card he'd been trying to pay down, the one with the interest rate that made his stomach hurt. But she was okay. That was all that mattered. He dozed fitfully in the chair, his neck at an angle that would punish him later. When pale light began filtering through the thin curtains, he checked his phone. 6:23 a.m. He was supposed to be at work in 37 minutes. Ivy stirred, opening her eyes. Daddy? Hey, baby girl, how you feeling? Better. Did you sleep in the chair? Just keeping an eye on you. She smiled, then noticed the light. Are you late for work? Nah, we're good. You hungry? The morning routine was chaos. Marcus called Miss Claudette, who assured him Ivy could rest at her place for the day. He threw on clean scrubs, made sure Ivy had her favorite stuffed elephant, and ran for the bus. He arrived at the hospital 40 minutes late, slightly out of breath, his supervisor's disapproving look making it clear this was noted. Ms. Whitmore asked for you, Keisha said when he reached the nurse's station. Specifically? Wouldn't let anyone else help her this morning. Marcus frowned. She asked for me? By name, said the tech from yesterday who talked too much. Keisha grinned. That's you. When Marcus entered Daniela's room, she was sitting in her wheelchair by the window, dressed in expensive loungewear, her locks pulled back. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Your daughter okay? She asked without preamble. Yeah, fever broke early this morning. Thank you for asking. Daniela nodded, then said, I need your help with something. Of course. What do you need? I need you to show me that garden outside, and I need you to tell me why you still believe in hope when life gave you every reason not to. Marcus stood very still. This was different from yesterday's resignation. This was a woman testing the waters, seeing if they'd hold her weight. It's February, he said gently. Pretty cold out there. I don't care. 10 minutes later, they were outside. Marcus had grabbed a hospital blanket and draped it over Daniela's lap. The garden was mostly dormant, winter bare branches reaching toward a gray sky, but there was a peace to it. They sat in silence for a while. Then Daniela spoke. 9 months ago, I was driving home from a board meeting. My father's company, my company now, technically, though my uncle runs it. I was 26, had an MBA from Wharton, a penthouse in Buckhead, a fiancé who said he loved me. Her voice was flat, reciting facts. A drunk driver ran a red light. My car flipped 3 times. My spine shattered at T6. Complete injury. No motor function below the chest. No sensation. No future. Marcus said nothing, just listened. My fiancé left 2 weeks after the accident. Came to the hospital, said he couldn't do it, that he'd signed up for a different life. My father had already passed, but his family, my uncle, my cousins, they visit once a month. Duty calls. They ask about my progress, then talk about the company, about decisions they're making without me, about how tragic it all is. Her hands tightened on the armrests. I've been to 3 rehab facilities. The first 2, I tried. I pushed through the pain, the humiliation, the constant failure. I tried so hard. Her voice cracked, and nothing changed. The doctors kept saying the same thing. It's permanent. Learn to adapt. This is your life now. So I stopped trying, she continued. Stopped pretending I could will my body into cooperation. Stopped hoping, because hope was killing me faster than the injury. Marcus let her words settle in the cold air. You asked why I still believe in hope, he said finally. I don't. Not really. Not the way people mean it, like some magical thinking that makes everything okay. Daniela looked at him, surprised. When my wife was dying, people told me to hope, to pray, to believe in miracles. Marcus's voice was quiet but steady. And I did. I hoped so hard it broke something in me, and she died anyway. Then what are you telling me? Daniela asked, frustrated. What was all that about not giving up? I'm saying hope isn't about outcomes. It's about showing up for the next moment, even when you don't know what it holds. It's about letting people care about you, even when you're sure you're not worth caring about. It's about staying alive, not because you believe everything will be okay, but because you refuse to let pain have the final word. He turned to face her directly. My daughter is the reason I get up every morning, not because I'm hoping for some better future, but because she needs me today, this moment, and that's enough. Daniela's eyes were wet. But you have a reason, a daughter who needs you. What do I have? You have today, Marcus said simply, and tomorrow you'll have tomorrow. That's all any of us get. They sat together as the morning grew lighter, 2 people carrying impossible weight, finding unexpected relief in shared silence. Finally, Daniela said, My uncle is trying to have me declared incompetent. He wants guardianship so he can control my inheritance. That's why I'm here. One last chance to prove I'm trying to recover, so the judge sees me as functional. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. That's why he brought you here? Not to help you, but to protect himself. Welcome to my world, Daniela said bitterly. Everything is currency, even my disability. What happens if he succeeds? I lose everything. My company, my money, my independence. I become a ward of the state or his charity case. He gets control of a $50 million estate. 50 million. The number was so large it didn't feel real to Marcus. He thought about his $43 in checking, about choosing between Ivy's birthday present and groceries. Then we don't let him succeed, Marcus said. Daniela laughed, hollow. How? I can't walk. I can't prove I'm capable of anything. Yes, you can. You're here, aren't you? You asked for help. You showed up. Marcus leaned forward. And I'm going to show up too. Every day. We'll work together. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Because nobody should face their worst day alone, and because something tells me you're a lot stronger than you think. Daniela stared at him. This stranger offering something no one in her life had offered in 9 months. Partnership instead of pity. I don't even know your last name, she whispered. Webb. Marcus Webb. Daniela Whitmore. She extended her hand. When he took it, her grip was firmer than he expected. Still there, still fighting, even if she didn't know it yet. They wheeled back inside together, and something had shifted. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. As Marcus helped her back to her room, Daniela said quietly, "Your wife? What was her name?" "Simone." "She'd be proud of you. The way you talk about her, the way you love your daughter, that doesn't happen by accident." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Thank you." "And Marcus," Daniela's voice was soft but certain, "I'll show up tomorrow, for physical therapy, for whatever comes next. That's all I'm asking." But both of them knew it was more than that. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, a connection forged not from romance or attraction, but from the deeper recognition of two people who'd been broken and refused to let it be their ending. Marcus finished his shift in a daze. When he picked up Ivy from Miss Claudette's that evening, his daughter took one look at his face and said, "Something good happened today." "What makes you say that?" "You look different, less sad." Marcus knelt down, pulling her into a hug. "You know what, baby girl? I think maybe something good did happen." That night, after Ivy was asleep, Marcus sat in the dark apartment and thought about Daniela Whitmore, about the weight she carried, about the uncle trying to steal her life, about the way she'd looked at him when he offered to show up. He didn't know how to save her. He didn't know if he even could, but he knew he was going to try. Daniela Whitmore's life had been shattered. 9 months after a devastating car accident that left her paralyzed from the waist down, she sat alone in a hospital parking garage, contemplating ending her life. The accident wasn't random. Her fiancé Bradley had pushed her down the stairs, causing her to lose their baby and sustain a spinal cord injury. Bradley abandoned her when she became disabled, and her family, particularly her mother Constance, blamed her for the failed relationship and viewed her wheelchair as an embarrassment. After cycling through 3 rehabilitation facilities where staff treated her as already dead, Daniela had lost all hope. She'd been a powerful CEO of Price Development Corporation, a real estate company her father had built, but now she felt worthless and broken. That night in the garage, she was preparing to drive her car into a wall when Marcus Webb, a hospital custodian working the night shift, found her. Marcus Webb was a 32-year-old single father raising 6 children, his biological daughter Ivy and 5 foster siblings, on a custodian's salary. His wife Simone had died 3 years earlier, leaving him to navigate parenthood alone while working day and night shifts to make ends meet. Despite his exhaustion and overwhelming responsibilities, Marcus stopped when he saw Daniela in distress. He didn't offer platitudes or pity. Instead, he sat with her, shared his own story of loss and survival, and reminded her that strength isn't about independence. It's about showing up, even when it's impossibly hard. Marcus convinced Daniela to give life one more chance, suggesting she transfer to Emory Rehabilitation Hospital, where he worked days as a patient care technician. His approach was fundamentally different from everyone else in her life. He saw her as whole, not broken, treating her wheelchair as merely a detail rather than her defining characteristic. Daniela agreed, moving into a private room at Emory. The first week established a rhythm. She attended grueling physical therapy sessions with Dr. Chen each morning while Marcus worked. Then he'd visit after his shift. Dr. Chen pushed Daniela harder than any previous therapist, refusing to let her wallow in hopelessness. The exercises were excruciating. Parallel bars she couldn't feel her legs on, resistance bands that seemed to do nothing, electrical stimulation that promised nerve awakening but delivered only disappointment. Yet Dr. Chen's philosophy resonated. Don't hope, just show up, let your body decide what it can do. Marcus's 7-year-old daughter Ivy became a frequent visitor, bringing joy and uncomplicated acceptance into Daniela's life. The child saw past the wheelchair, treating Daniela as simply another adult worthy of friendship. Ivy made her a friendship bracelet in purple and gold, Daniela's favorite colors that the child had somehow remembered, and gave her a worn copy of "Oh, the Places You'll Go," a book Marcus had given Ivy when her mother died. The gesture was both heartbreaking and healing, showing Daniela that even a child who'd lost so much could still find ways to comfort others. During this time, Daniela continued running her company remotely from her hospital room, responding to emails and making decisions while managing pain that would have most people begging for relief. But trouble was brewing. Her uncle Richard, who'd always coveted the CEO position, began copying the board on emails questioning her capacity to lead. His messages were carefully worded power plays. "Daniela's been unavailable for critical meetings. We need leadership that's present. Perhaps it's time to consider restructuring executive roles." Richard called an emergency board meeting to discuss executive capacity concerns, code for removing Daniela while she was vulnerable. He'd chosen his moment carefully, waiting until she'd been absent long enough that her leadership could be questioned, banking on the board's discomfort with a CEO in a wheelchair. Facing the prospect of losing everything her father had built, Daniela asked Marcus to accompany her to the board meeting. Despite feeling out of place in the corporate world, a patient care tech in his new Target shirt standing beside a CEO in designer armor, Marcus agreed. At the meeting, Richard sat in Daniela's seat at the head of the table, already acting like he'd won. He questioned whether she could travel to construction sites, stand during presentations, or command a room the way the position required. But Daniela came prepared, pointing out that she'd attended every board meeting remotely, closed 3 major deals, and presided over an 18% increase in Q3 numbers, all from a hospital bed. When the board still seemed uncertain, wavering on the optics of a CEO in a wheelchair, Marcus spoke up. His defense of Daniela was powerful not because of corporate jargon, but because of raw truth. He compared his own leadership as a single father raising 6 kids on a custodian's salary to her leadership of a Fortune 500 company, arguing that the fundamentals don't change. "Leadership is leadership," he said. "Showing up when it's hard, making decisions that affect people's lives when you barely have energy for your own." Marcus's words, combined with Daniela's passionate declaration that she refused to let anyone tell her she couldn't do something, swayed the board. They voted 10-5 to keep Daniela as CEO, rejecting Richard's attempt at a power grab. It was a victory, but one that came with personal cost and revelation. But this victory came with an unexpected revelation. Daniela admitted to Marcus that she was developing feelings for him, and he confessed the same. Both were terrified of the risk, given their vastly different worlds, her penthouse and his 1-bedroom apartment, her millions and his $43,000 salary, her freedom and his responsibility to protect Ivy from potential loss. They agreed to explore the relationship carefully, with Marcus first discussing it with his daughter. Ivy's response was characteristically direct and wise beyond her 7 years. She asked if Daniela would be her bonus mom, and pointed out that Daniela already did mom things, like helping with homework and reading stories. She'd noticed that her father smiled differently when talking about Daniela, that they both acted weird and shy around each other. Her blessing, given with the clarity only children possess, gave Marcus and Daniela permission to move forward. 2 weeks into their tentative relationship, as Daniela settled into a furnished accessible townhouse in Virginia Highland, halfway between the hospital and Marcus's apartment, Detective Morrison from Atlanta PD called with devastating news. Richard had been arrested for corporate fraud and embezzlement. A 6-month investigation had uncovered that he'd stolen $12.4 million from price development over 3 years using shell companies, falsified invoices, and contractor kickbacks. The timing became sickeningly clear. Richard's attempt to have Daniela declared incompetent wasn't about concern for her well-being. It was about covering his tracks. If he'd gained guardianship and control of her shares, he could have destroyed evidence and continued the theft indefinitely. Daniela's accident and subsequent absence had given him cover to accelerate his crimes, but her return threatened to expose everything. The guardianship push was his endgame, a desperate attempt to hide years of systematic theft. The discovery devastated Daniela. Her own uncle, her father's brother, the man who should have protected the family legacy, had been bleeding the company dry while she fought to survive. When she reviewed documents at the police station with Marcus beside her, the scope of the betrayal became overwhelming. Contracts she'd supposedly signed but hadn't. Payments to companies that didn't exist. Construction costs inflated to hide theft. For 3 years, while she built the company into something her father would be proud of, Richard had been destroying it from within. The board called an emergency meeting to address the crisis, and Daniela faced a room of concerned, uncertain faces, wondering if she could navigate the company through this catastrophe. Between the board meeting and dealing with Richard's arrest, Daniela faced another painful confrontation. Lunch with her mother Constance at the country club where Daniela had grown up. Marcus accompanied her to the bastion of old money and older judgments, his beat-up van looking out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs. Constance sat at a corner table wearing Chanel and disapproval, her eyes tracking Daniela's wheelchair with barely concealed distaste. When she met Marcus, her dismissal was immediate. A patient care technician had no place in her daughter's world, her manner suggested. But the real purpose of the lunch was worse. Constance blamed Daniela for Richard's arrest, suggesting she should have handled it quietly, as a family matter, rather than involving police. "For money, Daniela. Just money," she said, as if corporate fraud was merely a family disagreement. When Daniela defended her decision to report the crime, Constance attacked her disability, her failed marriage, and her inability to have children. The confrontation escalated as Daniela finally articulated years of accumulated pain. Her mother had blamed her for Bradley's abuse, for her miscarriage, for her paralysis, making Daniela feel defective and worthless. "If you'd been a better wife," Constance had said after the accident, suggesting Bradley's violence was somehow Daniela's fault. In front of the entire dining room, with Marcus beside her and country club patrons pretending not to listen, Daniela set boundaries she should have established years earlier. She told her mother she was done seeking approval, done trying to be the daughter Constance wanted, done letting her judgment define her worth. "I'm a damn good CEO," she declared. "I survived a car accident that should have killed me. I've done more from this wheelchair in 9 months than most people do in years, and I found someone who sees all of that and values it." Constance left in anger, heels, clicking on marble, trailing expensive perfume and disappointment. While Daniela felt the pain of burning that bridge, Marcus helped her understand that some bridges need burning when they only lead to places that hurt you. In the parking lot, as Daniela shook with the aftermath of the confrontation, Marcus held her and reminded her that she hadn't destroyed a relationship. She'd protected herself from someone who was hurting her. "That's not destruction," he said. "That's survival." At the Monday board meeting, the company faced the full scope of Richard's betrayal. CFO Thomas Lynn presented the forensic audit revealing $12.4 million in losses, potential lawsuits from defrauded contractors, and a PR nightmare that could destroy the company's reputation. The board looked to Daniela, watching to see how she'd handle the biggest crisis in the company's history. Daniela made a bold decision that prioritized integrity over expediency, prosecute Richard fully, cooperate completely with law enforcement, reach out to every affected contractor with apologies and full restitution, and take out full-page ads in major publications explaining what happened and the company's commitment to ethical business practices. When a board member objected that making contractors whole could cost millions, Daniela responded that it was cheaper than losing their reputation. Price development was built on integrity, my father's integrity. If we try to hide this or minimize it, we become complicit. The board voted unanimously to support her plan. Daniela would remain CEO with full authority to manage the crisis. Richard's assets would be frozen and seized where possible. The company would emerge damaged but honest. But the crisis wasn't over. Thomas pulled Daniela aside with more bad news. Richard had placed his shares, 20% of the company, in a trust for his children before his arrest, with his wife Helen as trustee. Helen blamed Daniela for Richard's imprisonment and was calling yet another emergency board meeting, moving to remove Daniela as CEO. The shares were potentially protected from seizure, meaning Helen now controlled a significant voting bloc that could be wielded against Daniela. Friday arrived with Helen Whitmore sitting at the head of the conference table, expensively maintained and freshly enraged. Her strategy was sophisticated. She portrayed Richard as a whistleblower punished for questioning Daniela's capacity, suggesting Daniela's discovery of the theft was retaliation rather than fiduciary duty. She argued that either Daniela was complicit in the theft or incompetent for not catching it. Either way, unfit to lead. The room shifted uncomfortably. It was a good angle, painting Richard as a victim of Daniela's vindictiveness. Even when Helen's motion to remove Daniela failed 10-5, she had a backup plan. She announced a shareholder derivative lawsuit alleging Daniela's negligence had created an environment where fraud could flourish. The lawsuit would mean depositions, discovery, public trial. Even if Daniela won, it would devastate the company and cost millions in legal fees. Helen had created a path to destroy Daniela through litigation even without the board's support. Then the conference room doors opened and everything changed. Attorney Simone Johnson entered with Martha Washington, head of construction management, James Lewis from accounting, and Keisha Henderson, a young engineer. They represented 247 employees who'd signed a petition supporting Daniela. Marcus had made this possible. The previous week, he'd called Martha to see if anyone wanted to help, and the response had been overwhelming. Employees testified to Daniela's leadership during her recovery, remote meetings at 6 in the morning for time zone differences, contract reviews while managing debilitating pain, strategic decisions made from a hospital bed. Martha declared that firing Daniela would result in mass resignations. Construction managers, engineers, the entire architectural design team. "We'll walk," she said, "and good luck running a development company without people who actually know how to build things." The employees weren't threatening. They were stating facts. They'd organized, hired legal counsel, and come prepared to defend the CEO who'd always defended them. Their testimony was powerful because it was personal. Daniela knew their names, visited construction sites even in her wheelchair, treated them with respect, implemented profit sharing that gave families security they'd never had before. Then Thomas Lynn delivered the final blow. The forensic audit had found evidence that Helen knew about Richard's activities. Bank transfers to her personal accounts, credit card charges traced to shell companies. Helen wasn't just defending her husband, she was potentially complicit, a co-conspirator trying to avoid prosecution by removing the CEO who'd discovered the fraud. The color drained from Helen's face as Thomas announced that the FBI would be contacting her shortly. Daniela moved to have Helen's shares placed in independent receivership pending the criminal investigation. The vote was unanimous. Helen's power play ended before it truly began, her threats of lawyers and lawsuits ringing hollow as she fled the conference room. After Helen's defeat, after the board members left with apologies and commitments of support, after the employees departed knowing they'd fought for something that mattered, only Marcus and Daniela remained in the conference room. The city sprawled below them through floor-to-ceiling windows, autumn rain streaking the glass. "You called in my employees," Daniela said, still processing what Marcus had orchestrated. "You organized that." Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hands. "Because you're the woman I love, and I'm not going to sit back and watch people try to destroy you. If I can help, I help. That's what love does." The words hung between them. Love, spoken aloud for the first time, making real what they'd both been feeling but afraid to name. "You love me?" Daniela whispered. "Yeah, I do. Have for a while now. Been scared to say it, but life's too short for fear." His voice was steady, certain. "I love you. Your strength, your vulnerability, your determination, your heart, all of it, all of you. Daniela felt tears streaming down her face. Marcus Webb, I love you too. So much. You saved my life that night in the parking garage. But more than that, you gave me reasons to want to be alive. You and Ivy, you're everything I didn't know I needed. They kissed with the certainty of people who'd fought battles together and emerged stronger, who'd chosen each other despite every logical reason not to, who'd built something real from the wreckage of their separate pasts. 6 months later, Marcus, Daniela, and Ivy moved into a 4-bedroom craftsman house in Decatur. It wasn't large or ostentatious, just a home designed for accessibility and, more importantly, designed for family. Ramps instead of stairs, widened doorways, roll-in showers, a kitchen with adjustable height counters, a yard for Ivy to play in, space for Marcus to finally have his own room. And it was theirs, together. Moving day was beautiful chaos. Marcus's few possessions mixed with Daniela's designer furniture, IKEA pieces integrated with expensive art, Ivy racing through rooms, claiming the one with the window seat and immediately asking about a swing set. The ordinary, beautiful mess of lives being woven together. The past 6 months had brought significant changes beyond the new house. Helen had been arrested shortly after Richard, her complicity in the fraud proven beyond doubt. Both faced trials with guilty verdicts seeming certain. The company had recovered stronger than before, its reputation enhanced rather than damaged by Daniela's transparent handling of the crisis. Employees remained fiercely loyal. The board was supportive. Revenue climbed steadily. Daniela had made progress no doctor thought possible. While she wasn't walking independently and might never walk without assistance, sensation had returned to her legs. She could move her toes. Her core strength allowed her to stand with support for minutes at a time. Dr. Chen called it a miracle. Incomplete spinal cord injuries sometimes surprising everyone. Daniela called it stubbornness, love, and the power of having reasons to fight. Marcus had accepted the board position Daniela offered, bringing a perspective no other member could match, the voice of people who actually lived in the housing they built. He'd quit his night shift but kept his day position at the hospital because the work of helping people rebuild their bodies mattered to him deeply. Now he had evenings and weekends free to be present for his family. Ivy had adjusted with the remarkable resilience of children. She called Daniela Danny now. Not quite Mom, but not Miss Daniela either. Something in between, something uniquely theirs. She'd integrated Daniela into her world seamlessly, as if her family had always been meant to include this woman who baked with her, helped with homework, and read bedtime stories. On their first night in the new house, after unpacking boxes and eating pizza on the floor because furniture wasn't assembled yet, after Ivy finally crashed from exhaustion, Marcus and Daniela sat on the back porch watching fireflies in the dusk. Marcus seemed nervous in a way she rarely saw, fidgeting with something in his pocket. "I want to ask you something," he said, pulling out a small velvet box worn at the edges. Inside was his grandmother's ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond, beautiful in its honesty. His grandmother had given it to him before she died with instructions to give it to someone who understood that love is a verb, not just a feeling. Someone who shows up, someone who fights. "Daniela Whitmore, you are the strongest, bravest, most incredible person I've ever met," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've made me believe in possibilities I thought were gone. You've loved my daughter like she's yours. You've built a life with us that's messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, Ivy's bonus mom, my partner in everything?" Daniela couldn't speak through her tears, could only nod frantically, sobbing and laughing simultaneously. Marcus slipped the ring on her finger. A perfect fit, like it was always meant to be there. Then Ivy's voice came from the doorway. "Is Danny going to be my real mom now?" The 7-year-old stood in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, looking hopeful and scared and excited all at once. Daniela opened her arms and Ivy ran to her, climbing into her lap. "I can't replace your mom," Daniela said carefully, holding the child close. "Your mom will always be your mom. She gave you life. She loved you first, but I can be another person who loves you, who chooses you, who shows up every single day. Is that okay?" "That's perfect," Ivy whispered, wrapping her arms around Daniela's neck. "Because I choose you too." Marcus wrapped his arms around both of them, and for a long moment they stayed like that. A family, chosen and built and real, formed not from biology or tradition, but from the deliberate choice to show up for each other. 3 months later, they married in a small, perfect ceremony. Dr. Chen attended, proud of her patient who'd defied every expectation. Martha and the employees who'd defended Daniela sat in the audience, witnesses to a love story they'd helped protect. Miss Claudette cried in the front row, having watched Marcus survive his darkest years to finally find light again. Board members Sarah Rodriguez, Harold Chen, and Thomas Lin attended, representing a company that had become more than just a business. It had become a community. Notably absent were most of Daniela's blood family, with one exception, her sister. Patricia had appeared at Daniela's office 2 months earlier to apologize. "I was wrong," she'd said simply. "About everything. About you. About what matters. About choosing Mom's approval over your well-being. I'm so sorry." Forgiveness took time and wasn't yet complete, but they were trying. Patricia's presence at the wedding was a small, fragile bridge being rebuilt. Ivy took her flower girl duties with utmost seriousness, walking with perfect posture and carefully scattering petals. Daniela wore white, custom-tailored to drape elegantly over her wheelchair. Marcus wore a suit that actually fit, purchased for this day, this moment, this commitment. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus knelt beside Daniela's wheelchair and kissed her like she was the most precious thing in the world, because she was. At the reception, held at the Price Development Community Center because Daniela wanted her employees to celebrate with them, Martha gave a toast that captured everything. "I've worked in construction for 30 years. I've seen CEOs come and go, but I've never seen a leader like Daniela Webb. She's shown us that strength isn't about standing tall. It's about refusing to stay down. She's shown us that family isn't just blood, it's choice. She's shown us that love doesn't require perfection, just presence." The room erupted in applause, and Daniela actually stood, using forearm crutches with Marcus on one side and Ivy on the other, to address her guests. She told the story of that night in the parking garage, of wanting to die until a stranger stopped. She thanked Marcus for saving her life and giving her reasons to want to be saved. When Ivy tugged her sleeve and whispered something, Daniela laughed and announced that Ivy wanted everyone to know she'd predicted the wedding from the beginning, because 7-year-olds are very smart about these things and grown-ups should listen to them more. The room dissolved in laughter and love, and Daniela felt the weight of every battle, every loss, every moment of pain transform into this: joy, belonging, family, home. 1 year later, Daniela stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for a new accessible housing development, Price Development's flagship project, designed with input from disability advocates and partially funded by money recovered from Richard and Helen's seized assets. The development would be fully accessible, not just meeting ADA requirements, but actually designed for people with disabilities to live full, independent, dignified lives. She stood, not in her wheelchair but on her own feet, using forearm crutches for balance. She'd been walking with assistance for 6 months now, her body surprising everyone, including Dr. Chen. Slowly, carefully, painfully sometimes, but walking. Dr. Chen called it a miracle. Daniela called it the power of having reasons to fight, of love giving strength to bodies that had been told they were finished. Marcus stood beside her, now a regular presence at company events as both board member and CEO's husband. 8-year-old Ivy perched on his shoulders, louder and brighter than ever, treating the groundbreaking ceremony like the important occasion it was. Press cameras clicked, employees cheered, and Daniela drove the ceremonial shovel into the ground. Symbolic, yes, but deeply meaningful. "This development will be fully accessible," she announced to the assembled crowd. "Not just ADA compliant, but actually designed for people with disabilities to live full, independent lives. Universal design from the ground up. Because accessibility isn't accommodation. It's justice. It's recognition that all bodies deserve spaces that welcome them. That dignity isn't something you have to earn. It's something you're owed simply by existing." Applause thundered across the construction site, and Daniela saw Martha wiping tears, saw employees who understood what this meant, saw the future being built literally from the ground up. After the ceremony, as they walked toward the car, Daniela slowly with her crutches, Marcus pacing beside her, Ivy running ahead before circling back, Marcus said, "I'm proud of you. For all of it. The company, the recovery, this development, the life we've built." "We built it together," Daniela corrected. "None of this happens without you. Without Ivy. Without people who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Ivy grabbed Daniela's hand, careful not to throw off her balance. "Danny, can we get ice cream? To celebrate?" "Absolutely. What are we celebrating?" "Being a family," Ivy said with the profound simplicity only children possess. "That's worth celebrating every day." Daniela looked at Marcus, at Ivy, at the accessible development that would give people dignity and independence, at the life they'd created from the absolute wreckage of her worst day and his darkest years, at the impossible, beautiful, perfectly imperfect reality of choosing each other and continuing to choose each other every single day. "Yeah," she agreed, her heart full to breaking. "That's definitely worth celebrating." They walked toward the car together, a family built on showing up, on fighting, on refusing to let the hard things win. A family formed not from perfection, but from persistence. Not from having it all together, but from choosing to stay together when things fell apart. As the sun set over Atlanta, casting golden light across the construction site where accessible housing would soon stand, Daniela Whitmore Webb knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in spite of her wheelchair, not in spite of her past trauma, her family's rejection, her body's limitations, but because of it all. Because every moment of pain, every battle fought, every night she'd wanted to give up but didn't, all of it had led to this, to love, to my family, to purpose, to a life where she could look at herself in the mirror and see not brokenness but wholeness, not disability but capability, not loss but transformation. She'd learned what Marcus had tried to tell her that first night in the parking garage, that strength isn't about standing tall on your own. It's about showing up, asking for help, letting people care about you, and choosing to keep going even when the path ahead looks impossible. The wheelchair hadn't ended her life. It had, in the strangest way, saved it, stripping away everything false and leaving only what was real. And what was real was this. She was capable, she was worthy, she was loved, and she was exactly enough. That night, tucked into bed in the home they'd built together, with Marcus beside her and Ivy asleep down the hall, Daniela thought about Dr. Seuss's words from the worn book Ivy had given her. "You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes, you can steer yourself any direction you choose." She'd learned the truth of those words. You didn't need feet that worked to steer your life. You just needed courage, support, and the willingness to keep showing up. The rest would follow, and it had, in ways she never could have imagined, in ways that were better than anything she'd dreamed before the accident, before the loss, before the long, dark night that led to Marcus and Ivy and this beautiful, complicated, perfectly imperfect life. She closed her eyes, Marcus's breathing steady beside her, and felt at peace. Finally, Completely, wholly at peace. This was home. This was family. This was everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.